Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Neill Kramer coming all the way from Bali to see us. He's actually a day ahead of us here. So Neill, you're coming to us from the future, so to speak. You're what, 8, 9, 10 hours ahead of us?
I think 12.
12 hours ahead of us from Bali. So at any rate.
No, wait, 12 would be 10 p.m. So I think it's like 10 hours. This is 8 p.m. for you?
It is now, what is it? 7:05 here.
Okay. Oh, so it's 9 hours. Okay.
9 hours difference between California and Bali. So Neill, I'd love to hear kind of your history of how you got there and some of the different information that happened along the way, your challenges and your successes.
Okay. Well, I lived in the Bay Area for about 20 years and mostly tech and mostly startups. And as I was aging, in my late 40s, I'm 67 now. I started to see that, my ability to work with younger people and work with their schedule was challenging. Sometimes they would want to meet at 9 p.m. or something like that. And I was like, well, I have a 3-year-old, I better get home. And they're like, no, we don't want you to go home. We want you to join the meeting. And I'm like, I'm going to go home. So it didn't quite work out, especially, the startup world. Different if you were to work for Amazon or something like that. But I'm a startup guy and an entrepreneur, so that was my space. So I realized I needed to transition. So I decided to go up to Sonoma and buy some land, raw land, and I'm kind of a wannabe architect. And I love working with architects, so I just bought the land and then hired an architect, and actually didn't have to do much with an architect because I used a modular system called Studio Shed, and I was trying to offset any risks of going with an architect that might have been too expensive or too complicated, and Studio Shed is basically shed-like structures that are very modern looking and attractive, but also inexpensive. So I bought 3 of them, and all I had to do was really connect them with walkways to make it a quote-unquote house. And by doing that, I saved time and money because we did the foundation work while they did the fabrication in a factory. I was doing the foundation. So for about a month to 2 months, I got the groundwork done, the foundation done, the pads ready. And then one day, a huge truck arrived, and there were these wall panels and windows inset in the walls, and everything was ready to go, and they just spread it all out like a big Lego set. And within a week, they were all up. So it was pretty exciting. It was a success from that point of view. There was a couple of things with the exterior panels that took longer and was more expensive than we wanted. But mostly it was a successful experience. And then I actually sold it in 2 days, but then they backed out because there was a shared well with 3 other properties, neighboring properties, and they were nervous that the well wouldn't be sustainable for 4 properties, but that wasn't true. But maybe they got cold feet. And so it took me about another month or 5 weeks to sell it again. And I did okay. And I said, okay, now I'll do it again. But the problem I ran into was my personal lifestyle. I was single for the first time. I was married for 20 years, and I found a rental and, an apartment that was reasonably priced for Sonoma, but everything is on the high side. but you know, shaggy rug and kind of a dumpy apartment, and still a little bit pricey, and also no friends, no community, and you know, I enjoy going to the work site. I enjoy getting the thing done, and I really think it was a nice build, but it was a lifestyle issue. So I did it one more time in Washington State, this time with an architect, and I joined the crew of that one. That was really interesting because sometimes the weather was around 30 degrees and I had to wear like 7 layers. And then other time it was absolutely perfect. But yeah, we went through a winter, and that I sold very quickly, under 2 weeks, I think, for a little less profit. It was 2 hours commute to Seattle, so it was a little of a stretch for people, but it sold. And I ran into essentially the same problem of feeling a little isolated. This time it was a private house instead of an apartment, but it was also, you know, not much of a place to live. And so I couldn't, I mean, what would be ideal in that scenario is to have a home that I liked, that maybe I built for myself, modest even, and then go out and buy land and do, you know, do the rinse and repeat of buying land, getting an architect, building it and selling it, and having a second home that I enjoyed. But you know, you need capital for both, and certainly a single developer like myself with no history, I can't go to a bank and say, hey, can you lend me money for this spec project? So it all had to be cash, and so I ended up in these apartments. And then one time I said, oh, let me go take a vacation. I went out to Thailand to just spend a month after selling the unit. And I really enjoyed that. And then I started looking at the numbers, and I was like, oh, I could retire. I could retire in Asia, no problem. And but you know, I had a lot of my life was in the U.S., so it took me a while. It took me 3 years to take these annual trips. You know, first year to Thailand, 2015, 2016. I divided it into 2 weeks in Cambodia, 2 weeks in Vietnam, and then 2017, a month in Bali. And when I went to Bali, I came home and sold everything, and within 6 months, packed up and left the US, and I've been in Bali for about 7 years. So that's a long answer. Sorry, Bruce.
No, that's a very good answer. So you got to Bali, and then you started, at least my knowledge of you, you started a newsletter about retiring in Bali. And
Yeah.
Apparently you also started a Facebook group about retiring in Bali.
I did, and then well, I did an oddball thing that I don't recommend anybody doing, but during my month trip to Bali, by the third week, I knew Bali was going to be sort of like my home, and I was going to make this transition. I just started looking at real estate for the heck of it, for fun, really. And I saw a place that really triggered all the buttons with like a rice field view and a very well-made structure that you know, the developers were from Belgium, but this was like their 7th project, so they got all the kinks worked out. A really nice setup for around $300,000. And it was, the other benefit was it was 85% done, and it gave me time to sell it, and they could still live there and finish it the way I wanted it. And then when I came back from the US to Bali permanently, I'd have like exactly my setup, which is what I did. And I bought a place even before moving to Bali. I bought this place, and it worked out fine, except that I had this idea of retirement, which a lot of people have, which is you wake up and you go to your terrace, in my case, and sit on a nice cushion and read a book and drink some tea and look out, in my case, at the rice fields, and maybe the farmers are harvesting or planting or doing whatever, chasing the birds away. And the next day, you wake up and you make the tea again and you go out and you sit on the terrace and you read. And I didn't even have a Kindle on purpose. I had books. I really wanted to be like, zen about it. And then the next day, same thing. And then after about 6 months, I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with my life now? I'm just, I'm out reading these books, and it's a beautiful view, and I've seen 2 harvests already of the farmers, and I know what that's all about. And now what do I do with my life? And you're not prepared for that when you first go into, well, some people are, but when you first go into retirement, you think it's, permanent vacation, it's just going to be amazing, month after month, year after year. But if your brain is working, what are you going to do with yourself? So then I ended up looking around for real estate, because that was something I could, fall back on. And a lot of expats do that here, especially Australians. So I ended up buying a lot and building a hotel. I don't know if you know that. Yeah, that might have.
I saw that on your LinkedIn.
Oh,
feature.
yeah.
I didn't realize that you had built it. That's very interesting. Yeah.
So that was a whole different, construction experience, concrete structure, but they use bamboo sticks to support plywood before they pour the concrete, and it looks like a little jungle of these 70, 80 bamboo sticks randomly placed to just hold that concrete up until it dries, and they give it like 2 weeks or something. And it took like a full year plus about 3 months to design. And I built it in a way where I was going to be part of it. So I had an apartment for me and my wife, who is Indonesian. She was a girlfriend at the time. She became a wife. And then I had 6 rental units that were in the same building, but they were, normal hotel rooms, although 4 of them were lofts with 2 levels and 2 of them were standard. So all the renters and guests would pass through me. They'd actually come into my living room. I would give them the key and a welcome drink, and then take a photo of their passport. And when they exited the living room, it became my living room again, my private living room. So for a few minutes, it was a reception area. And I did that by design, because I thought, I want, people come from all over the world to Bali, and I kept track of all these visitors. And even with COVID, in about 4 years, we had people from about 41 different countries in that range.
Wow.
And it was really, really, really nice. But the big lesson for me at the end of COVID, I had to think, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in this business? I never did hospitality before. And my answer was, in hospitality, 80 to 85% of all guests are wonderful. But what do you do with 10 or 15% that are not?
You're right. Right.
And that, do you want that headache? At my age, which was already 63, 64, do I want it? And the answer for me was not really. Although 85% were, I met people, you name a country and, they came, and they came not just to my place, but to Bali. So it was nice, but anyway, I ended up selling it at not the best price, because the airport had just opened again after 2 years, and I couldn't sell the business side of it with any profit. But the real estate, because my wife's Indonesian, you can buy, I can buy freehold land in her name, essentially the same type of land that you get in the US, which is freehold versus leasehold. Leasehold means the landowner still owns it, but you could have a 30-year lease, you could have a 50-year lease, but eventually you do give it back to the landowner. But in my case, I bought freehold and I sold it to a Jakartan guy, a guy from Jakarta, who only would want freehold because he's a citizen, and there's no point for a native to buy leasehold. So I sold it, and now I live in a normal house, and I have to figure out what to do again. But yeah, it was this idea of retirement where you just come, go somewhere. It could be Florida, it could be anywhere, and you're just going to sit on your deck and whittle wood or whatever you do. You have to have some kind of purpose, or you have to have a project, or you have to be a volunteer. You have to do something with your life, and that's what I ended up learning when I came to Bali. And then of course it's the stresses. You don't want either financial stress or whatever stress to get in the way of having a healthy retirement. And I can't emphasize enough, how important focusing on your health is, because statistically speaking, when you're 63, you do start a decline till about 79, and then your life is statistically over. And that's only 16 years. So, you're going to build up whatever wealth you have. You're going to, work your career and get everything organized. And then all of a sudden you realize, guess what? I'm declining. Now that could be simple things like, not getting the sleep you had when you were in your 40s. Or it could be, you take a fall, and instead of getting better in 3 days, it takes 3 weeks. I'm not talking about getting cancer or anything debilitating. I'm just saying you're in a decline. Statistically, you're in a decline. And people don't think about that for retirement. So that's why I always emphasize health to anyone who wants to think about, what do I do, as I get older? Well, get rid of whatever stresses you can and extend that healthy part of your life is what I tell people.
Well, you have what is it, a monthly newsletter? How often do you write your newsletter?
Monthly.
So you have a monthly newsletter that is very intriguing, and particularly intriguing since it's coming from Bali. So you're a very good writer. So I think there's some very, very good benefit to reading that newsletter for those that would like to.
I can add that. I can put that. I have the Retire in Bali Facebook group, but the newsletter is also quite good. And I try to make it so that you don't have to be Bali centric. It's more or less about financial independence and what to do with your senior years. How to go about managing your senior years. As I was indicating with this idea of decline. I didn't really know, when I started thinking about retirement, I was a little bit before 63, I was 60, but I didn't think, oh yeah, 63, I'm going to start to decline. But then I did fall in my bathroom one time around 63 or so. And it took, almost a month to recuperate, because it hit me in my lower back, and I hit the bathtub, and it was almost like a rock, so it was painful. But I know that in my 30s, I would have gone, and then, maybe a day or two, would have gone away. So
Right.
you learn these things as you get older. Not the best news.
Not the best news out there. No, it's as we all get older, it becomes a lot more delicate. I was crawling up on a stool the other day thinking that I should not be doing this. So
yeah, well, there is a lot of people promoting this, increased longevity on YouTube and everywhere, and then you can buy all these pills and everything. But one guy had an interesting way to put it: to focus on what you want to be like. Let's say when you're 80, do you want to take your grandchild and throw the grandchild up in the air, 3 or 4 feet, and catch it and be that kind of viral, have that
Yeah, vitality, yeah.
energy, vitality to just do that, over and over again with this amazing grandchild. If you want that, then you set that at 80, and then you have a program of how do I maintain myself until that age? And of course, he's selling a whole health system. But the concept is good, which is where do you want to be when you're 80, 85? Do you want to walk up a flight of stairs and not get out of breath at all, or walk up 5 flights and not get out of breath? Well, then you got to work backwards, and what do I do this week? And what do I do tomorrow? And so I mostly walk and I do some hand weights, but I'm not going to be preparing to be triathlete when I'm 80. It's just not my personality.
not in your bailiwick, so to speak. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think some of these marathon runners and so forth do more damage than good. So you got to figure out what's the best health regimen for trying to optimize your health and not deteriorate, as slowly as possible. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So if you want, Bruce, I could give you an idea of like cost per square foot and Bali to give you a sense of why I would build here in the first place. Or do you have a question like that?
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic, actually, because I just was talking about cost per unit, cost per square foot with a San Francisco developer in my previous podcast. So it'd be interesting to compare.
So the reason I did a hotel is I was really in the range of about $45 to $50 a square foot.
Wow.
And when I was in Washington State, it was 325. And when I was in Sonoma, because it was a prefab, I was closer to 280, 290. But that, includes all the permits and all, plumbing and things that are not part of any kind of modular system. So I was calculating, basically $300 to $350 a square foot when I was in the business. And then I got to Bali, and there are people that they hire from other islands. The Balinese will hire the grunt workers at about $12 a day.
Wow.
And that's 8 hours. And that's 6 days a week. And they're happy. They're happy to do it because they're going to take that money back to Java, or there's like 17,000 islands, and many of them are, more poverty stricken. Bali is actually well off because of the tourist trade. So you can hire, and you don't hire them directly, you hire them through the builder. But if you are building in concrete and you need 30 people to come and pour for, a day, and prepare everything, I think 30 people is going to cost me a fortune. Well, it's over in a day, and the amount that you had to pay all these people was not a whole lot. So, you could have a normal crew of 10 or 12 people. And if you did the math, it's, labor is not really very much. So it comes out to, I did another one here, the one I'm living in now, which was about $55 a square foot. So it went, let's say, 45 to 50. Now it's around 55 or so. And you can go much higher. You can, because you've got the Four Seasons here, you've got Ritz-Carlton, and those places are going to have lobbies and stuff that are really gorgeous and expensive. But I'm talking about a normal house, like a normal upper middle class house. $50, $60 a square foot. It's really remarkable. And when you think about the costs, and what are the costs now? Because I'm saying,
we're talking probably in the $700 range now. Yeah, I mean 10 times the cost. So it's just if you're under $100 a square foot, it's a bargain. It sounds like it's maybe 10 times more expensive to build in the Bay Area right now. And
I think that's probably correct. Yeah. And like I built a hotel for under $1 million with, a whole apartment and 6 units for about $800,000. I know that it was $2-3 million project if it was in the US, but I could do it for under $1 million, so why not? You know?
So it's 7 units total,
7 units,
7 units.
about 750,000 really
So
US.
we're just building some retirement, some affordable senior retirements, and we're talking about $1 million a unit. So that would be a $7 million project here. So
Yep.
yeah,
So
I
there
mean, you might be able to do it for 6 million or 5.5, but still,
Yeah.
it's still probably 10 times more expensive here.
Yeah, no, I know. I followed this project for seniors up in Healdsburg, and I was just waiting to see. It was kind of like pre-announcement, and then they announced their prices per unit, and it was, I think, 1.5 million or something was the lowest. So, okay, I'm not, that's not a senior living for me because then, that money's not working for you anymore. So it's not going to be
Right.
good for me.
It-
So,
It's tied up in your house or your
yeah,
condo
and
or your unit. Yeah.
yeah, that's not what you want when you're, fixed income is all you have. You don't have a salary. So, you have to be really careful about, you're on a fixed income and then, the market's going to go up and down. So you have to really, and that's what I did when I, made the decision to come. Is like, what is the base level that I need for all of my expenses and stuff? And am I above that no matter what I do? And so, yeah, it's budgeting, but budgeting is a key aspect of retiring, I guess.
So if someone did want to come to Bali and live there,
Yeah.
what's the formal process for becoming an expat? Is
Um,
Bali open to
So
Americans?
if you're 60 and over, you can get a retirement kitas, is what they call it. It's not a citizenship, so I'm not a citizen here, but they're good for a year. And then after 5 years, you could bump it up to a 5-year kitas. So you would pay like for the full 5 years with a discount up front. And I haven't done that because I just go year to year because my son's in the US and I don't know what might happen, and I don't want to pay for a 5-year visa that I may not need. So I just go year to year, and you're talking about $800 per year
Okay. All
paying an
right.
agent, and that will set you up, and you don't have anything to worry about for 12 months.
Oh, wow.
And you do need $1,500 a month income or 2,000 that you could show, or a total amount of, I think, $150,000 that you have to show during your visa immigration application. And if you meet those relatively modest numbers, they let you in. And they want seniors. The seniors are not the noisy ones, and we're going to spend our money, here while we're here. And that's, I'm surprised they don't do more to bring seniors, but they love tourists, so they focus on the people who are only going to be here like a week or 2 weeks, and that's the main focus. But if they focused on retirees, I don't know if you've been following the world trends, but the world is getting older at a pretty rapid pace.
Yes. Yeah, the
And
boomers are getting older.
yeah, and there's trillions. I read there's 93 trillion in the US only of the baby boomer assets, which is primarily real estate. It's an astounding number. It's really hard to get your head around. And other countries aren't really focused on this. And Asia would be a perfect place, again, because the labor costs, I can get a massage, for example, 1 hour massage for about $11. And labor for building, for construction is low. The only expensive people are doctors and lawyers, which is universal. But everybody else, is very modest here and throughout Asia. So it's an alternative for certain types of people.
So how is healthcare in Bali?
Yeah, good question. Very good question. So I would say that if you have a rare disease or anything really unusual, that Bali, or I would say there's a couple of places that you could go to. Singapore would be one.
Right? Yeah.
Bangkok, possibly another, because they're heavily focused on what they call medical tourism. And that's where you arrange everything, including your stay with the hospital. They actually have part of the hospital with hotel rooms inside the hospital. So it becomes a a medical tourism experience. And they're very good with that. So, but in Bali, if you have normal health issues, no problem. There is a new development that's not open yet, but we're kind of excited about it, which is the Mayo Clinic, which you're probably aware of.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
consulting with the Bali International Hospital.
Oh,
And
wow.
amazingly, they changed the laws for the entire country so that doctors can work in Indonesia and be foreign born. It used to be only Indonesian born doctors could practice in Indonesia.
Oh,
The Mayo Clinic changed the game entirely because, you know, the expertise level, they realized like, wait a minute, you know, we can have a certain percent of foreign doctors who really, you know, are at the peak, and we'll bring them in and they'll teach everybody else. So the Mayo Clinic did a deal and they're opening any month, like maybe within 2 months. And it should be a very successful thing here because they don't have medical tourism, and this will be like the beginning, but they'll have oncology, they'll have everything. And I think it will bring in retirees as well.
oh, yeah. No, that's fantastic. Actually, my brother-in-law worked as a top administrator for the Mayo Clinic for many, many years. So I can't wait to ask him about this because I'm sure
Yeah.
he's very aware of it.
Well, they are an international brand now. I did some homework on them. They're not just based in the US anymore. And you know, they're one of the top medical practices, you know, in the world. So why not lend their expertise worldwide? So Indonesia, and part of this, by the way, comes from the COVID problem. When COVID happened, Bali shut down. Of course, everybody shut down, but tourism went from like 85% of the revenue to zero.
Oh,
So
wow.
all the Balinese had to go back to their villages, back to their farms, and start growing their
Wow.
own food. And the politicians realized, well, wait a minute, we can't have all our eggs in one basket. And so what do we do? And one of the new things they did is they dedicated this land, sort of a government deal. You get on this land and you can build medical tourism facilities. And that's how the Mayo Clinic got involved.
Oh,
And
my
it's
gosh.
gonna be nice. It's gonna be
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's near where the Australians go to retire, in the town of Sonor, which is a really nice little beach town. So once your medical thing is done, you could hang out in Sonor and it'll be nice. It'll be inexpensive. You can do the same thing in Bangkok, but Bangkok's really busy city, and Bali is going to be more of a, like, not tropical paradise because we have infrastructure problems, et cetera, but it's still an island. It's still really nice here. And so that's well, not an alternative now, but maybe in 2 months, 3 months, you'll probably see some news about it, even in the
Oh,
US.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm surprised I haven't seen it already. So
Well,
that's
they're not,
fantastic.
yeah, they're not open yet, but the news here, like all the seniors here are like, when is this thing gonna open? Because
Quick, come on, let's go.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a McDonald's, like a super McDonald's, you know, it's just a really,
Yeah.
it's a brand, I mean, first of all, luckily I'm healthy, but for even me personally, if I have something serious, that's where I'm going to get, you know, an
Oh,
opinion or a
absolutely.
second opinion, yeah.
Absolutely. So
Anyway,
do
what other questions do you have?
so do you get your health care from the US? Where do you find health care?
I
in terms of
I have all the
insurance?
I have all the US healthcare stuff. I don't have private insurance because I'm on the Medicare, so I would have
Oh,
to,
right, right. Oh, you're still
I
on
would
you're
have to,
still on Medicare. That's interesting. Okay.
yeah, you can. And you know, Social Security, Medicare, all these things you can do living in a foreign country, no problem.
So
But
the
getting to the
Bali,
US is going to be 20 hours for me. So the only risk I'm running is if there's something really, really serious, I do have to take care of it locally. But if it's something where, like, let's say I could go somewhere and they give me an opinion like, oh, in the next few days, you should do X, Y, Z, I can get on a plane, but I'm 20 hours away.
but if the Balinese doctors will take Medicare, it sounds like.
No, no, no. You pay cash with that, but you're talking about, again, like a checkup is like $30.
Oh, I
I
see.
I
Okay.
go to a dermatologist, for example. I had melanoma,
Uh-huh.
and Bali, the tropical sun here is really ridiculously intense, so you have to be careful. So I go for checkups, and it's a Western trained dermatologist, speaks English perfectly, has all the tools you need, and records, takes microscopic photos and records everything that's questionable. And you're talking about, okay, if there's a couple of little things she has to do, like burn off a couple of questionable things,
Right,
$50 instead of 30, or seven.
right. You're right.
And I remember having insurance when I was working in Washington State. I had, private health care, and my deductible was 195 for the same
Right.
exact service. So,
Right.
with health care, I'm paying $200 in the US, and without health care, I'm paying 40, 50. So, I mean, I don't need it. And now, if something big happens, then I have to either go US, Singapore, or maybe this Bali, this Mayo Clinic thing.
Mayo
Now, the
Clinic.
Mayo
Well,
Clinic's not going to be cheap. I will say that even though it's going to be in Bali, it won't
you're
be
right.
US prices. It'll probably be 1/3. But if you have a major, let's say you have a $50,000, thing happen in the US, it'll probably be 20,000 in Bali. They're not going
Right.
to charge nothing. It's the
Well,
Mayo
it'd
Clinic.
be interesting to see. I assume that the Mayo Clinic in Bali will not be able to take Medicare. Maybe
No,
they will. Probably
if they
not.
can, I will check, but if they can, it would be amazing. But I believe it's limited to the 50 states.
Oh, that's interesting. That probably makes sense that it won't go outside of the US.
I
Well,
don't
this
think
is
it's
a
outside the US.
yeah. This was a fantastic conversation. I'm so happy. So, how would people get a hold of you, Neill, if they'd like to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, they could, WhatsApp. I don't know if people use WhatsApp in the US.
Oh yeah, I do. I
It's
know
like
numerous
iMessage.
people
So
that.
I can give you my direct phone. It's a US number, actually. I still maintain it. By the
Okay.
way, if you do move abroad, you could port your phone number to Google IP services for $20, and you can still maintain the same phone number, and it works over the internet. So people can dial +1 650 for me, and the rest of the number, and Google will send it to me for almost nothing, almost free.
Wow. Wow.
And I'll send it to you. It's 650. So yeah, that's WhatsApp. And then I'll send you my Retire in Bali newsletter. I'll put that on there too. Let me get that, because I
Okay.
gave you Facebook. And the newsletter, though, is only once a month. So, but there's some interesting things. Okay, I'll
Oh
put
yeah.
that.
No, I've always enjoyed those. So,
Okay, good.
well, that's
So,
fantastic.
any other questions? I mean, I know it's very expensive to build, and to be honest, the quality, of course, is going to be superior in the US. But overall, you have a new set of opportunities if you're paying $50 or $60 a square foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
You can afford to do a lot of things. Of course, you got to get there and live there, but hey,
Yeah.
once you get there, it's a lot less expensive.
Yeah,
So,
it is. And that's it's not for everyone. You know, there's some spiders here and things, and geckos and things that crawl around at night, and it's probably a few extra mosquito bites than you're used to. So it's tropical. It's and it doesn't change, by the way. It's 500 miles from the equator, so there's no cold season, there's no, there's no fall or spring. And you just wake up every day, you put on your flip-flops and your t-shirt and then
Off you
start.
go.
Yeah, 78 degrees, 80 degrees when you wake up, and gets to 90s, 95 if it's a little hot day. And then in the night again, it goes down to same 80 degrees. And then tomorrow is exactly the same. But it's like, okay. Now we do have a wet and a dry season, but the temperatures don't change. It's
Oh, that's
just,
interesting.
it's
It's
just
either
tropical.
raining and hot, or it's sunny and hot.
That's right. And Christmas is, same flip-flops and t-shirt as it is July 4th. It's crazy.
Paradise, is it really paradise or not? That's the question, I think.
Well, it's a personal preference. It really, like, some people don't stay, but there are people who get tired of it.
Yeah.
I just like it. And I can visit the US, I can visit different parts of the world. But I'm not a big snow person. It's like I don't miss the cold really. So
Right.
if you miss, okay, I'm a ski bum. Well, Bali is not really, maybe surfing, turn it into surfing, maybe. I don't know.
Right. You're not coming there for skiing, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, Bruce. So listen,
All right.
good talking to you, and really fun. So
Really
let me
fun.
know if anyone has questions, just WhatsApp me or sign up for something.
That sounds great. So tell us your WhatsApp number again.
Okay, plus
Just
one.
say it verbally. Yeah.
+1
Yeah.
650, the Bay Area, 650-796
796
9967.
67. Perfect. All right. Well, great to talk with you, and we'll hopefully see you again soon.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.